So thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about the common mistakes that people make when they're planning for um, possibly applying for Mass Health. We have a new program here at Generations Law Group that's for our long-term care planning clients. If you find that you have maybe a new diagnosis, or even if you're just thinking like, well, what if this might happen? I would really like to have someone who guides me through what might be coming up in the next few years ahead. So that's our Aging Pathfinder program. And actually, Samantha is the long-term care department director. And so she would be guiding you through, meeting with you, making sure that you know any resources that you need, things like that. So the program is keeping her as your guide into what's coming up ahead. So we have attorney Samantha Gentle presenting this afternoon. Again, it's about MassHealth common mistakes. Samantha is our long-term care planning director in our office here at Generations Law Group. And Sam, I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm attorney Samantha Gentle, Generations Law Group. We have offices in Sudbury and Acton and now Andover. I'm going to be talking about common Mass Health planning mistakes. And as a reminder, this presentation is only meant to be general advice. If you need official legal advice, please reach out to an elder law attorney. So for 2025, there is an updated income limit for Mass Health for either home care, which is also known as the Frail Elder Waiver Program. Also, the PACE program is another community program. Income limit is $2,901 a month. In both community programs and nursing home, you also have a monthly asset limit. So on the date you apply for Mass Health and at the end of every month thereafter, an individual has a $2,000 asset limit. And if a married couple is applying together, they have a $3,000 asset limit. If there's a married couple and the community spouse has over $157,920, then they're over the spousal income limit, but there are planning techniques that we can help with to protect the assets over that amount. And then the maximum equity in a home allowed is $1,097,000. If you are over income and wanting to benefit from a community program like the Frail Elder Waiver or PACE, if you apply for the Frail Elder Waiver and you're over the income limit, you can still receive the Frail Elder Waiver services and receive home care. However, you'll have to pay down a deductible every 6 months. We're in a weird phase here with Mass Health because a lot of my clients that have had that 6-month deductible, it's supposed to be spent down. You spend it down as quickly as you can in the first month of that 6-month period. Report that you've spent down the deductible on medical expenses. And then once Mass Health approves it, then they turn on the care for the remainder of the 6-month period. It's supposed to happen every 6 months. However, since COVID, my deductible clients have really only had to spend it down one time. They keep getting these letters called PD notices, and it says that they may have to pay something at a later date, but then it doesn't seem to come up yet. So that might be catching up with us at some point soon. If you are applying for the PACE program, which is a great program, you're in the community, you can be over income and just pay the PACE provider a monthly fee based off of income and expenses, and that's a little bit less burdensome than the 6-month deductible. However, that only works if you're applying for PACE in the community at home. There are some PACE contracted assisted living facilities. Those you have to be under income to qualify. So when thinking about common MassHealth mistakes, we're thinking about the MassHealth 5-year look back period. The 5-year look back period applies to transactions of $1,000 or more when you're applying for MassHealth to pay for your nursing home care. There are planning techniques that work in the community MassHealth arena because there is no look back period. However, we always want to plan, even though, most people, their goal is to stay at home as long as possible or stay in the community. However, you have to plan as if you're going to need nursing home placement in the future, because you don't want to do anything that might negatively affect nursing home eligibility. So you always have to keep the 5-year look back period in mind, even if you're currently applying for a MassHealth program that doesn't have a look back period. So common mistakes made prior to applying for MassHealth. So big one is just gifting money, that if it's seeming like you're in the place where you're aging and you might need care at some point in the near future, you should really not be gifting any money, particularly not in increments of $1,000 or more. Another one that I see a lot is commingling of funds. So usually it's this, and to be clear, this has to do with family members that are other than spouses. There's unlimited transfers allowed between spouses, but I'm talking about, adult children, other family members, friends, etc. So I see a lot of adult children who just like, oh yeah, I paid for a bunch of stuff for my mom, and then just every so often she pays me back. That's really hard to track, and could cause MassHealth to think that maybe mom was gifting to the child as opposed to paying them back. So it's best if you're, managing a parent's funds, make sure they have their own bank account, and if you're helping pay their bills, have credit cards that are connected to their accounts or debit cards. And if you do need to pay for something for them, make it in exact figures and keep receipts, maybe even, and start a spreadsheet of money that's being transferred back and forth if that's what you need to do. But it's best to just spend the parents' money on themselves and keep your money separate, and because it will just save you a headache and your attorney a headache later on. Another common mistake is that, oh, my accountant told me that I can gift, now the 2025 number is $19,000 a year, or that's double if it's a married couple. That's okay for tax purposes. That is absolutely not okay for MassHealth, and I see that a lot. Some of our older population is used to dealing in cash, and they'll, withdraw a lot of cash at once to then use on various things. That can be a red flag for MassHealth. So it's better to, you could pay with a debit card or credit card, or write checks, or, withdraw smaller amounts of cash if you need cash. Another common mistake is having multiple accounts at multiple banks. It lends itself to having accounts forgotten about, and that can put a MassHealth application in jeopardy. MassHealth can do searches at based on your social security number, and they will be able to locate accounts that are connected to your social security number. So I've had cases where I thought everything was tied up in a nice bow, and then I get an information request letter from the MassHealth caseworker, and it mentions an account that I was unaware of, and it turns out that the client forgot to tell me about an account. Another common mistake is paying a caretaker and or a family member under the table. If you have a private care, it's easiest to work with a care agency, a private care agency. Then you've got contracts, you've got clear records that these people are, contracted caretakers. However, a lot of people may find an individual or a family member that wants to help take care of them. When doing that, we recommend working with an elder law attorney to get a care contract between you and the caretaker. And also, it's a good idea to get connected with a payroll company for one-to-one payroll. Some other common mistakes are transferring real estate, a car, or an asset of value to a family member without having them pay fair market value. Gifting can be transferring a car or real estate, etc. So those will certainly be more than $1,000. Transferring real estate to a family member and retaining a life estate. Some people do this instead of doing an irrevocable trust to try to protect their home from a MassHealth lien. This works in some cases, again, if you do it before the 5-year look back period, but transferring real estate to other individuals and retaining a life estate is risky, because if that person that you have transferred the real estate to either gets divorced or sued, then your home could be at risk. So when trying to protect a home, we usually advise to do an irrevocable trust over a life estate. And another one is not having a strong, durable power of attorney, or not knowing the location of the original. A lot of the last minute asset protection measures that we can do for MassHealth planning. Unfortunately, in those cases, a lot of our clients have dementia or other memory issues, and they're unable to make decisions for themselves any longer. So that's when the durable power of attorney comes into play. And not having a strong, durable power of attorney in place will result potentially in loved ones needing to get court authority to help protect your assets if there's missing clauses in the document. So asset protection measures to put into place in advance. Getting long-term care insurance is a great way to protect your assets and allow more cash to be saved by obviously having your care paid for out of a long-term care insurance policy. Depending on the type of coverage, it may be able to protect your house from a MassHealth lien. However, there's a lot of caveats to that. It has to have a certain number of dollars per day, certain number of days covered. The policy needs to be in effect when you are in the nursing home. So, a lot of people might exhaust their policy while they're at home, and then maybe even continue to stay at home longer before nursing home placement's needed. That will not protect against a lien. There are some new really great hybrid life insurance and long-term care insurance policies where you can draw on the policy to pay for long-term care, but if it's not used up by the time you pass away, it can be inherited as life insurance. That type of policy, however, does not protect against a MassHealth lien. You can do an irrevocable trust and put your home in it. You can also put cash in it. However, we try to make sure that the client has enough cash outside of their trust to be able to pay for their long-term care for at least 5 years. Because if an unexpected health event happens sooner than 5 years after setting up the trust, if they want to protect the house, they need to have enough money to pay for their care to get through the 5-year look back period. The trustees of the trust, if you want to downsize, your trustees can sell your home for you and then purchase a new home. It will not restart the 5-year clock. Any cash that's available in the trust or real estate cannot be you cannot directly benefit from it. So you need to make sure you have planned your assets accordingly. Another type of planning we do is called a will with a testamentary trust. We do this with married couples because there's unlimited transfers between spouses. If one spouse is healthy, we transfer all of the money over to that spouse. And then they set up a will with a testamentary trust inside it. This testamentary trust is a supplemental needs trust. If the community healthy spouse predeceases the spouse that's receiving MassHealth, any of their probate assets will have to pass through the public process of probate, but then can fund this trust in their will. The money or assets in the trust can be there for the surviving spouse's supplemental needs while they're alive. The state cannot touch the money. And then after that spouse dies, it can then be whatever's left in the trust can be inherited by the contingent beneficiaries. I mentioned previously the importance of a durable power of attorney. And if you're going to be doing any gifting, you certainly want to make sure it's more than 5 years before needing nursing home placement. So there are also a lot of great last minute asset protection measures that we can do. Again, it's not always done by the power of attorney, but a lot of times it is. So a great last minute asset protection measure, although this can also be purchased ahead of time as well, is a prepaid irrevocable funeral contract. So MassHealth, for whatever reason, does not want you paying for flowers or food in this contract. But other than that, it just needs to be irrevocable. In addition, so a prepaid funeral contract is something you do with a funeral home. So you go to the funeral home. Most funeral homes should be aware of the MassHealth rules with funeral contracts, but just make sure they're aware or talk to your attorney ahead of time to get instructions. In addition to the prepaid funeral contract, you can also at the bank get a burial savings account. This needs to be titled properly so that the beneficiary can access the money after you pass away. And if it's a married couple, each spouse can have one. It doesn't count towards anybody's asset limit. Just as long as you put the money in there and leave it there, don't add to it and don't take anything out. And what's silly about this rule is even though with the funeral contract, MassHealth doesn't let you pay for flowers or food, with the burial accounts, MassHealth doesn't really track what happens to the money in these accounts after the person dies. So theoretically, you could use that money on flowers and food and they wouldn't know. I'm just the messenger for these silly rules. They don't necessarily make sense. For married couples, we can transfer money to the community spouse that's not in the nursing home or receiving community benefits. You can transfer the house to the community spouse. If the community spouse ends up having over their asset limit, which is $157,920 for 2025, they can get a single premium immediate annuity, also known as a Medicaid annuity. With these annuities, basically you take the community spouse's assets over the limit into this annuity. It's not like an amazing investment, but you're not going to lose anything. And then you get the money back in a monthly stream of income. The reason why MassHealth is okay with these annuities is because the state needs to be the primary beneficiary of the annuity. So they're going to want to try to get paid. If the community spouse predeceases the spouse receiving care, they want to try to get paid back for what they spent on the spouse's care in the nursing home. And then you get contingent beneficiaries. So if the state gets paid back and then there's money left, the contingent beneficiaries can inherit from the policy. We tend to try to do very short-term annuities like 5 years, 2 years, depends on the situation, because the goal is we want that community spouse to outlive their annuity and get all their money back, so then the state doesn't get the additional funds if possible. And something else I wanted to mention is if you're applying for the PACE program, another awesome benefit to the PACE program is that there is no spousal asset limit. So you will have to report the spouse's assets, but they don't count. So you don't have to tie up money in an annuity. For single individuals, we can do a and I'm saying for single individuals because normally if it's a married couple, we'd rather than tying up money in a trust, we can just move it all over to the community spouse. When we're dealing with a single person and they don't have a spouse, then we're limited in terms of transferring assets. A pooled disability trust is a supplemental needs trust. They're managed by trust companies. The company I tend to work with the most is Plan of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Another local company is Guardian Community Trust, and there are a few more in this throughout the state. You take the person's assets over the $2,000 asset limit, and it goes into this pooled trust managed by a trust company. So this is not a trust that's drafted by your attorney. It's a set trust that is run by a trust company. The money can be in this trust for the person's supplemental needs while they're alive. It has to be distributed in a special way as to not negatively affect their public benefits. And, it's a great money to have because if you spend down to nothing before you apply to MassHealth, then there's no money for clothes or haircuts, or maybe, if you need additional care or maybe a medical procedure that's not covered by insurance, you've got no pool of money anywhere to help care for this person. So it's a great idea to set up a pooled trust with some of the money you've got left before applying for MassHealth. The trust company, gets an annual fee to help manage the funds. If there's any money left when the person passes away, the trust company gets a small percent for their administrative purposes, and then the state gets a crack at it. So the state again wants to try to get paid back for what they spent on the person's care, which is why they allow for these trusts, because there's a chance they may get paid back. If there's any money left after the state gets paid back, then when you set up a pooled trust, you list contingent beneficiaries, and they can then receive the rest of the proceeds. Takes about a year before they can inherit anything.
Sam, I have a question. We can back up for a second. You've mentioned the PACE program a couple times. Can you explain to us what that is?
Sure. It's the Program for All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. Great program. There are a bunch of centralized PACE locations around the state. The one that covers Metro West, which is a lot of our clients, is Summit Elder Care. But there are several different PACE programs all over the state. There's a big focus with the PACE program on keeping people at home and not sending them to a nursing home. So trying to get enough care for them that staying at home is possible, or going to assisted living, because that also counts as being in the community. They have, at these centralized locations, they have their own doctors. So part of going on PACE is you have to switch to all of their doctors, and they also have their own health insurance, supplemental health insurance that you'd have in addition to Medicare. It turns some people off about thinking that they need to change their doctors, but these doctors have low patient numbers and specialize in working with the elderly. So you're probably going to get more individual attention with your new doctor than you would with your current doctor, unless you're already with a concierge practice. Depending on your location, if the PACE provider is kind of far from you, for instance, there's Adult Day Health in Framingham that has satellite offices. There's also now a satellite PACE office near the Natick Mall, for just as an example for Summit Elder Care, because that's close to us. And so you may be able to also see your doctor at one of the satellite locations that's closer to you. They provide transportation to all appointments. They're at the larger locations. There's adult day health. There's you can get lunch. There's activities so that you can make a day of it. And they can provide both home care and adult day health. So there's, you get more socialization. You can get adult day health through the Frail Elder Waiver Program as well. But I'm a big fan of the PACE program. I think it provides a really great service for our elders.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another last minute asset protection measure is the caretaker child transfer of the house. So there's a lot of rules that are in place for the caretaker child exception, and there needs to be a lot of documentation. So if the child has lived with the elder for more than 2 years and the home is their permanent and primary address. So if they have an apartment that they live in and then just come to care for their parent daily, that doesn't work. It has to, there needs to be record that it's been their primary residence for more than 2 years. They need to assist with activities of daily living, and the care provided for the elder prevented the elder from needing nursing home level care sooner. And the rules are very clear that it only works for a child, because we see a lot of grandchildren caring for a grandparent or a niece or nephew caring for an uncle or aunt. That doesn't work. It's only if it's a child. And, we have to provide birth certificates, affidavits, documentation from the doctor, documentation from people who have witnessed the care being provided. So as long as you can get all of that, there's a good chance you can transfer a whole house to a caretaker child. Another last minute asset protection measure is the transfer of potentially unlimited funds to a disabled child. There's a lot of caveats to this as well. If the child, you have to know what the child's public benefits are, because if a disabled person has asset limits similar to MassHealth, and they receive a sum of money, that can cause them to lose their own public benefits. So if it's possible to set up a third-party supplemental needs trust for that disabled child, that would be a good idea. If they're just on SSDI, that doesn't usually have an asset limit, so they could potentially receive funds outright. If they have not been determined to be disabled by the Social Security Administration, you have to submit a bunch of other paperwork about them to the MassHealth Disability Determination Unit. It's a UMass Disability Determination Unit. And then they'll have to determine if that person's disabled or not. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to take any more questions you have. Does Social Security count towards income limit? Yes, it does.
So thank you all. If you do have any questions after we end the call, just reach out to us. Our number is 978-263-0006. We will try to answer your question as quickly as possible. And have a great afternoon, everybody.